Hi, friends. I hope you're having a terrific day. Welcome back to another story time. Today's story is set in a hotel. Let's find out what happens. A most exceptional guest. A most exceptional guest. Written by Justine Corman Fontes. Illustrated by Sandra Shad. Albert Prince was in fact the third prince to own and operate the luxurious Palace Hotel. Like his father and grandfather before him, Albert took pride in making sure the hotel lived up to its slogan, Live like royalty. Every detail had to be just right. Every rosebud in every crystal vase was fresh. Each king-size bed was perfectly wrapped in soft, newly laundered sheets, and a delicious premium chocolate mint was placed nightly on every pillow. Albert knew everything there was to know about running a five-star hotel. He trained all his employees personally and took pains to make sure his guests were served to perfection. The hotel was very successful, and one would think that Albert would have been happy, but no. Often it seemed his hard work was barely even noticed. Businessmen who worried about sales reports and connecting flights rarely took the time to smell the roses in their rooms. Guests on vacation seemed more concerned with sightseeing and tour buses than their perfectly fluffed and folded towels. "You need to get married," Albert's mother would say, but Albert only shook his head. Who had time for socializing? He had a hotel to run, and the minute he turned his back there would be a gum wrapper on the carpet in the lobby or an unnoticed pair of shoes in need of a shine in the hall outside a guest's room. Besides, who could possibly understand the millions of details that kept him and his staff working around the clock? Albert stood at the front desk, leaning against the polished marble counter. Once again, it had been another exhausting day. Except for the honeymoon suite, every room in the hotel was booked. There were so many people to please. To make matters worse, both front desk clerks were out sick, and there was a terrible storm raging outside. As soon as it dies down, Albert thought to himself, I shall have to summon the gardener to clear away all of those fallen branches. Albert watched sheets of rain hit his beautiful glass doors as the thunder boomed and the rain hissed. Albert sighed and went back to his accounts. Suddenly he looked up. The roar of a powerful engine mingled with the noises of the storm, and Albert's eyes turned again to the great glass doors. Through those doors, Albert saw a woman come round the circular drive on a motorcycle and pull to a stop. Carrying her helmet under her arm, she entered his hotel and strode confidently to the desk. Albert could see that her leather gear was soaked and covered with mud, and as she approached along the slip-proof protective runners, the newcomer left a trail. "May I help you?" Albert asked politely, at the same time silently acknowledging the distinct scent of motor oil and hoping the woman needed nothing more than directions. "Yes, please," the woman replied. "I would like a room for the night." "I'm terribly sorry," Albert told her. "We're completely booked," fibbing outrageously on both accounts. The woman sighed and pulled out a gold credit card, saying, "I am willing to pay whatever it will cost. I simply cannot travel any farther in this storm." Albert was surprised, for, despite her soggy appearance, the woman's voice was refined, her manner quite cultured, like that of a world traveler. Though her attire resembled that of a rough biker, She sounded, well, like a princess. Well, there is the honeymoon suite, Albert confided, lowering his voice. I'll take it, the woman said decisively, signing the register. Albert turned the book and read her name, Elizabeth Charming. I do hope you have a pleasant stay, Miss Charming. We stopped serving dinner an hour ago, but if you would like, I can arrange a meal for you, Albert offered. Thank you. That would be most kind. I'm famished, Miss Charming said, picking up her keys and heading for the elevator. As soon as she was gone, Albert grumbled to himself as he dialed the carpet cleaners. Just what I need. A muddy carpet protector and an irritable chef. Do hope he doesn't cut corners. By the time Elizabeth Charming came down for dinner, she had spoken with the chef and had made her choices. Now as Albert watched Miss Charming leave the elevator and glide toward the dining room in an elegant silk cocktail dress and pearls, he was stunned by her beauty. While her expensive fragrance still hung in the air, he himself selected a CD of romantic classical music and directed the waiters to attend to her every wish. When Miss Charming left the dining room, Albert made the point of asking her whether she had enjoyed her meal. I certainly did, she exclaimed. The sourdough rolls were delicious, not adequately warmed, but delicious nonetheless. The spring mix salad with raspberry vinaigrette was delightful, and the lobster ravioli was excellent, though the sauce was, how should I say, feeble. The seasoning had not quite blended perfectly, you see, undoubtedly due to the lateness of my arrival. Albert did not hear his guest's remarks about the hazelnut tart she had for dessert. He was too busy falling in love. Elizabeth Charming had noticed every aspect of the meal, both good and bad. Who was this motorcycle riding princess staying at the Palace Hotel? While Albert stood dazed, his mother had come into the room and joined them. I'm so glad you enjoyed the block flute sonatas, Albert heard his mother say. Of course, we don't have the volume very high, but a meal without music is like a pillow without a mint, Elizabeth suggested, and both women chuckled. Speaking of which, was everything to your liking in the honeymoon suite? Albert asked, trying to regain his composure. Well, the French soap and shampoo have the loveliest fragrance. Lily of the Valley, I think. But the towels are not as fluffy as I would have expected at such a fine hotel, Elizabeth said, with a sweeping gesture of her hand. I'll bring you some fresh ones right away, Albert's mother said. The maids can, Albert began, but his mother had already scampered off with a peculiar smile on her face. Albert was left alone with Miss Charming. As they talked about music, art, books, and travel, Albert decided that she was the most cultured woman he had ever met. She had traveled the world by boat, plane, hot air balloon, camel caravan, and now by motorcycle. I would just love to tour the world, staying at all the very best hotels, Albert said. Miss Charming smiled and said, that would be the ideal vacation with the right companion. I'm afraid I'm a bit obsessed with my work, Albert confessed. Well, how else could you keep up the standards of this fine hotel? Miss Charming replied, adding, it must be difficult to meet someone when you have such a demanding career. Albert couldn't believe his ears. Someone finally understood. It's been a pleasure talking with you, but I must say I'm quite tired from my journey, Elizabeth said. Perhaps I will see you in the morning. Albert bowed respectfully and murmured, "I hope so," wondering whether Miss Charming would look as lovely in the light of day. Actually, Miss Charming was quite a fright when Albert saw her the next morning. She was dressed well enough, but the dark rings under her eyes could not be disguised with makeup. "How did you sleep?" Albert asked. "Not at all well," she exclaimed. "It's the strangest thing. It felt as though I'd been tossing and turning on a bed of gravel." Albert's mother appeared and took Elizabeth's hand. "I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, my dear," she began. "But last night when I brought you freshly fluffed towels, I put a spoonful of chopped hazelnuts under your mattress to see if you were truly as sensitive as you seemed." Albert was horrified. "Mother, how could you?" Elizabeth laughed. "Have you forgotten your fairy tales? Your mother obviously remembers The Princess and the Pea." Then turning to Miss Prince, she inquired, "Did I pass your test?" Albert's mother nodded, exclaiming, "With flying colors! I believe you are even more of a perfectionist than my son." "How else could I run the charming hotel?" Elizabeth replied. "You own the charming hotel?" Albert exclaimed. "The one in Atlanta? I've always dreamed of staying there, for I hear the service is wonderful and the towels—" "Fluffed to perfection," Elizabeth finished for him. Before you could say, "Do you have a reservation?" Albert Prince and Elizabeth Charming were married. They spent their honeymoon staying at the world's finest hotels, although, of course, they found none to rival their own. When they returned, the couple soon created a new chain of perfect hotels, each known as the Prince Charming Palace, and they lived happily ever after. Hi, friends. That wraps up today's story. I've included some story questions and an activity. These can be done in the classroom or at home. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you'd like to see other stories, please visit my channel at the Teachers Read Aloud, and please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much. See you next time.